So, okay, our next speaker is an old friend. He came into our lives in an odd way. Everybody comes into your lives. You know, it's wonderful how the universe works. And he started by filming Mom, Dolores Cannon, for a documentary or a film. I guess it'd be a film, 3 Magic Words. And we actually had the film at the Transformation Conference. I'm trying to think which year that was. Do you remember? It was longer than that. Yeah, it's been a while. We actually, I know, it's been a while. We had it here. We had you come and talk about it and everything. Does anybody remember when we did that? Yeah, Dennis, he's great. I've been here for all of them, see? It's been wonderful, yeah. And the 3 Magic Words, if you remember that, okay? It's a wonderful film. And it was actually, it's been listed as a top 12th transformational film of 2012 by Aware Guide. I didn't know that, and that's so cool. Isn't that neat? So, yeah, that's really, really cool. It actually is. It's a really nice film. And so that's, you know, you never know how people's lives are going, you know, what's going to happen. And what, you know, when they come in, he just thought he was filming. You know, he was interviewing Mom and doing this film. And she was one of many people that he was interviewing at the time. And then he just went on with his life, and we were doing our thing. And then he went on, and he put all that material, and he just kept on going and put all that material into a book. And then he came back, and he's like, would you be interested in publishing my book? and then we looked at it, it was like, this isn't bad. And so we're like, yeah, Michael, come on down. So that's how they come back into our lives again. And so it's always wonderful. But something else I was noticing, the title of his talk here, I thought this was interesting. The common theme of spiritual masters. But what I am noticing is, right off the bat, is there's a common theme that you're going to see among people, among these speakers. And that's that they see their work as a mission. Okay, we heard the first one, and I think you're going to find that very, very soon, that their work is a passion for them, and it's a mission. It becomes a mission for them. Okay, and what they do, and the work that he has done, that's what that film was. He went about his research, and he had to know this knowledge. This is coming from somewhere. It's a mission when they want to know these things. And so he had to go about learning these things. I mean, his history, his family was like, who are you? and they were like, how many families do not understand them? Right. I had a family where half of the family got me, okay? I grew up in a really cool family, okay? Yeah. Right? Yeah, I had a cool mom, yeah. Cool father, too. But most of us are lighthouses out there. We're in pretty desolate areas, wouldn't you say? Yeah. Well, that's kind of Michael's story too. So anyway, I don't want to take away from any more of your time, and you get to go over as well. Okay, I'm giving you permission now. Anyway, dear friend, Michael Perlin.
She's right, though. My parents still have not read my book yet. It's kind of like a lot of people, I bet, could say that, like Alcohol Anonymous. Yeah, my parents still haven't read my book. But it's okay. They will. So the way I'm going to start this, I'm going to ask you a question. Raise your hand if you believe that a personified male deity created a man and a woman, gave them 100 years to live, and then when they die, they go to heaven or hell. Raise your hand if you believe that. I got one person. Okay. Well, now there's some truth to that, but there's also a lot of untruth to that. It's very complicated, what I'm going to go into. It's very deep. And it's good that since a lot of people didn't raise their hand, I guess a lot of this information you've probably heard. Since you're here at this conference, I'm going to assume you've heard a lot of it already. There's a lot of new stuff I'm going to cover that you probably haven't heard. So now I'm going to ask you, raise your hand if you know exactly where we came from and how long the human race has been on this planet. Okay. I'm not going to say that I know that either, but I have some theories. Have you all heard of the Great Year? Who's heard of the Great Year? The Great Year is what the Hindu Vedas, they call what this 26,000 year cycle that our star, our sun, travels through every 26,000 years. It goes through a zodiac every 2,000 years. And the Hindus call it the rise and fall of the ages, where about 11 to 13,000 years we go into a dark age, and where everything goes into spiritual decline. We go into war and destruction, and then in another 11 to 13,000 years we go into an age of light, where we start to understand our spiritual connection to the earth and nature and each other, and we start to progress spiritually and technologically. There's evidence that this has gone on for a very long time, that we have been on this planet much, much longer than we've thought, and that we've come to very advanced states in our civilization. And it's possible from this evidence that there could have been 30,000 different versions of our civilization, that we keep getting wiped away and then having to start over again. And it usually ends every 5 to 10,000 year increments. The last one was probably about 10,000 years ago. So what you can look into from this is you can just look at the evidence, and you can listen to a lot of great authors. I wrote about this. I did about 20 years of research. Eric von Daniken, who's going to be here tomorrow at 3, you definitely don't want to miss. He was one of the first books I read on the subject, Chariots of the Gods. And there's evidence that there are structures all over the world, you've probably heard this, that defy explanation. I mean, there are stones that are cut with laser precision that they had no tools, they had no measuring tools, they had no iron to cut the stones, they had no wheels to carry them. So, and they lifted some of these 20 to 50 to 80 ton blocks up these cliffs, 11,000, foot cliffs, and we still don't know how they did that. This is all over the world. I'm just going to say a few. The Great Pyramids of Giza, the Citadel of Peru, Machu Picchu, Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico, Temple of Kukulkan, Ollantaytambo, I'm probably not pronouncing these right, Gate of the Sun at Tiahuanaco, statues of Easter Island, Stonehenge, Karnak Temple, they all defy logic. And the Citadel in Peru, the scientists say it's proven that these blocks have been melted by some extreme heat and just molded together. And they had no technology like that to do that. So who built these blocks? What do we know about, what have we discovered? Who built them? The Assyrian Babylonian creation story, the Phoenician history, the Popol Vuh of the Mayans, the Book of Enoch, the Vedas of the Hindus, the Avesta of the Persians, the Tibetan manuscripts, the Edda of the Scandinavians, the clay tablets of Glazal, the Celtics, the Incas, the Hopis, the Navajos, the Mindanao of the Philippines, and all of these legends, they all say the same thing. They say gods in flying machines came and moved these stones into place, moved these blocks. But the experts refuse to accept this explanation. It's all there. So I'm just going to say some stuff that we kind of discovered from reading the sacred texts and reading all the legends of these cultures. The Assyrian Babylonian great god Ahura Mazda is shown in a flying sphere. The Egyptians had the gods traveling in sky boats. The celestial abode of Ra was depicted sitting on top of a mountain rising heavenward on streams of fire and smoke. And this is identical to the abode of Yahweh, which also sat on top of Mount Sinai. In India, according to the Vedas, the gods traveled in vimanas that were flying machines. And they believe that they had spaceships. They even wrote about spaceships that could travel to other solar systems and planets. So some of the names for these were celestial chariots, heavenly chariots, flying vehicles, and even aerial cities. And that's the evidence. That's looking at sacred text, legend, cultures. So now let's compare this. This is what I like to do, and this is what I did in my book. I compare this information with the channeled material that we all know, that we've all read. Dolores Cannon, Edgar Cayce, some of the great people who have sat and channeled or have gone into past life regression or hypnosis, and there's a lot of those out there. And so I'm just going to name a few that we're going to look into, including Edgar Cayce, Dolores. There's the Urantia book, which I read from front to back, the Keys of Enoch, the Hindu Vedas, and the Hindu Vedas is not channeled, but we're going to go look into that a little bit more, and then the Atlantis material. So what do they all have in common? They all talk about creator gods, and they call them the Elohim. And Zechariah Sitchin, who translated the Sumerian tablets, he's one of my great teachers as well. He said that we were genetically enhanced Neanderthals and improved through direct genetic intervention. So the strange part about this, if you go back even further, is that they all talk about us being androgynous beings. And that's talking about millions of years ago, before there was any life on the planet. The oldest and most sacred religious texts in many cultures talk about creation masters or angels who initially chose Earth for their new creation. And they were androgynous beings who took power into their own hands. And when the earthly kings gave them gifts, they gave them their daughters as gifts, they decided to physically procreate with them. They saw them as so beautiful, and they decided, some of them, I'll go into that in a second. It's even in the Bible. It's in the book of Enoch. There's a couple sentences you'll see in the Bible that talk about it, that they mated with the humans or the Nephilim, took wives that they chose. And here's the thing that they all talk about. This was not really allowed by the Council of Light or the Elohim. This was kind of against the rules. So the Elohim banished these beings, banished them to be on the earth and incarnate as human beings. Now, this isn't just one place I found this. It's all over the place. It says that because of this, they were banished from the higher worlds and had to give up their immortality. Not only did they lose their androgyny, but they had to return to the process of human evolution and incarnate as human beings. In many sacred texts, these beings were called the fallen gods. Erlin Cheney, I don't know if anyone's read Erlin Cheney's material, she said in her book, The Revelation of Things to Come, that ages ago, very advanced beings came to earth, created offspring who mated with earthlings. As time went on, Atlantis was one of the places they did the experiments in. And in Atlantis, a corrupt brotherhood took over, and the advanced beings fled to other lands, including Egypt, where they helped build the pyramids to prepare for the Great Flood. And they knew this was going to occur. And with their advanced technology, they created deep underground cities accessible through the Great Pyramid and sealed it, preventing the earthlings from discovering these underground passages and to keep out the floodwaters. The Hindu scriptures speak of the first beings on earth as divine etheric beings who could assume physical form and create offspring at will. And it is written that these beings created the first man and woman in physical form. We know them as Adam and Eve. So, this story is found in many cultures. Many of the channeled and sacred texts speak about the Adam Kadmon, which is another name for Adam, as the primordial man and the first being to emerge from the infinite Godhead. The keys of Enoch describe the Adam Kadmon or Adamic man as the spiritual physical creation of man that we once were, and that the fall resulted in the loss of our spiritual power and oneness with the Father. So both the Urantia book and the Keys of Enoch speak of the modern man as a sub-Adamic race, and the previous uncontaminated version of man as the Adam Kadmon. So we were once a very pure Christ-like race, is what they're saying to us. And the Keys of Enoch elaborates that this fall, that some of the lords of light rebelled and sought to condemn the Adamic creation to destruction and interfered with the next models of the Adamic humanity for the planet. So in other words, we originally, the Christ-like race that we were, our gene code was contaminated by these fallen gods. I know it sounds like scary stuff and like science fiction, but bear with me. That was the feelings I was getting when I was reading this. I'm like, no, this can't be right. But the Keys of Enoch says that the Elohim lords first attempted to elevate man to a higher intelligence, but this ended in disaster when the people of light, which were us, the Adamic race, intermarried with the fallen offspring of the lords of light. And it ended in failure due to the mixing of genetic codes and resulted in warfare and destruction. It says that the Council of the Lords of Light had to intervene to prevent the corrupt species from endangering and interbreeding further with the population on the planet. So, to prevent this from occurring, goes on, it says they confused the language of Earth so that man would no longer have access to the higher records, nor the ability to build a space needle to communicate with the gods. And the Urantia book says that the Earth was quarantined and prevented from achieving a universal language, and that the planet was isolated and suspended of all interplanetary communication with the higher councils of light. So, you can see they're all saying something really, really similar. Let's look at what Edgar Cayce says about it. Edgar Cayce says that the Earth was first inhabited over 10.5 million years ago by asexual spiritual entities who gradually took physical form and took some time to split into males and females. He said that through the use of his creative powers for selfish purposes, man became entangled in matter to such an extent that he nearly forgot his divine origin and nature. Now, the great Paramahansa Yogananda, he said in his Second Coming, his book Second Coming, that the first beings were in alignment with divine consciousness, and they began to identify with sense consciousness and decided to explore a more material form and physical dimension. He says that they actually grew sexual appendages so they could partake in the animal form of procreation. And that's what he calls the fall. So, basically, they're all saying the same thing. All of these great teachings are telling us that we were spiritual beings, and we descended from higher states of consciousness as androgynous beings, or gods, during an involution into matter. And as we separated from the higher realms, we gradually lost consciousness of them, dividing into male and female, partaking in sexual procreation, and forgetting our divine heritage. In other words, the angels, the gods, these beings that came here, they are us. We are them. That's the conclusion here that I came to. And now there's two possibilities. Not only are we the offspring of these gods genetically, but we could also be, our souls could actually be, some of us could be incarnated. Gods that were banished and incarnated to live human incarnations. That's kind of like losing your immortality is what that would be. So, I don't know for how many of you it's a hard concept to grasp that we are them, but if you believe that we're one energy that make up the entire cosmos, that the consciousness of God is in everything and everyone, then you get it. You get the possibility that we are all each other. So this oneness, and that oneness is aware of itself and is conscious that it's conscious. And it's conscious that it's living through all of us. So this is some of the things this is not a new concept. This is a very old concept that the spiritual masters, this is the common theme of the spiritual masters, that they've been telling us for many, many, many millennium, that we are that vast energy source. And here are some of the things they said. They said that all beings are by nature pure consciousness itself, and it is due to ignorance that they appear to be different. They said that the great Ramana Maharshi said there's nothing to do to achieve God, for you already are God. That is how God created you. It is your true identity. It always has been and always will be. Your lesson is to own this fact, see it in others, and demonstrate it on earth. You either believe that the material world is real, or you see beyond appearances to the eternal self living in all things. He said that there is only one being in the infinite universe, and that is God incarnated as the self in all beings, including animals, plants, and rocks. That means we have the capacity to realize God in ourselves. And this is, it's a profound teaching, because when your consciousness is in the great self, you don't live in just one physical body anymore. You live in all physical bodies, and you realize that what you do to others, you do to yourself. I believe that there's a deep-seated memory of these gods who came here, and that's what is the cause of a distortion of spirituality all over the planet, because we're all identifying with the God that we believe in. And the last thing that I'm going to say that Ramana Maharshi said, I just chose him as was one of the great masters. God is not a separate, superior, and judgmental entity as our society's endorsed religious institutions want us to believe, but it is in fact the core essence of who we are, which is an all-knowing consciousness that is unconditional love.
Who am I? Ooh, that's hard.
And I am, boy, you got me stumped. I have to think about that a little bit.
I wouldn't want to be God. I feel like that's a lot of responsibility. I think it's a little bit scary. No, I don't believe I'm God. I hope not.
I am not God. I'm not in any way God or hope to be God.
But we are not God. We are mortal and we will die and rot, so we are not God.
I believe that there's, someone or something out there, a spirit, the creation, the universe that is in everything. I don't know. I don't usually use the word God, but it's on the same terms.
I believe that we are all an extension of God. We are all God. We are it.
It's God. You're talking about like 3,000 years of history and human suffering and anguish and war and joy, and that's a big thing. And I don't want that responsibility. I don't know. That's definitely don't want that responsibility.
Planet in the Milky Way.
So now I'm going to ask one last question, and then we can open for Q&A. Raise your hand if you know who you are. Okay, and now if you don't know who you are, you're welcome to ask the first question. Or anyone that wants to ask a question can ask a question now. Yes?
Who are you?
I am you. Mm-hmm. I am everyone. Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone have any questions about anything I talked about what's going on? If you have anything holding you back from knowing that you're God, please ask me, because I've done a lot of thinking about it. I guess everyone knows. Yeah.
I don't have a question about that. I was curious. I just picked up the Urantia book for the first time.
Nice.
Did you have to go back and study the English language to pick up that book back then?
It took me an entire year to read that book. I just every night after work I came home and I read in bed. I read that book. Yeah, it's huge, like 3,000 pages. Mm-hmm.
I just found it really difficult to understand some of the terminology, so I was just curious if you had to have like a dig entire side, or I just need to study the language?
No, I just read through it, and it starts to make sense. Yeah, all those words, they come back again, and you'll be able to say, oh, okay, that was used in this sentence, it must mean this. You just keep reading it like that, you'll get it. Yeah. Yeah.
The part you spoke of, that we are the, what's the word you used? In Enoch, when they mated with the fallen ones, I guess is. If we're the fallen ones, then who are the ones that, kept us from doing, what we were doing and everything? Who are the ones that were there?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I can just sum up a little bit of that. It's unclear how many of us could be or are the incarnations of the fallen gods. Most likely, the majority of us are the offspring of the result of the contamination, for lack of a better word. It's all part of the plan, so I'm not going to say it's a bad thing. But the Elohim, or the council of the Lords of Light, who, according to all this channel material, they basically are kind of keep us on. They guard the planet. They look over us. Those were the higher beings, and the fallen gods, or the fallen angels, who were extraterrestrials, or they were androgynous beings, or they were gods, or they were Nephilim. There's so many things and so many theories out there who they were, but they came and they broke the rules and genetically procreated with the Adamic, or the pure race that was on the planet, and there was a specific purpose for that pure race. It was to hold an angelic energy in the flesh on Earth, and so we had a really specific spiritual mission originally. And according to the Urantia book, unfortunately, this happens when some higher beings could defect from the Godhead and go into their own creation and mess around.
Higher beings, we were the same as the higher beings until we fell.
Yeah, you could say that. We were them. So the Bible has a lot of symbolic truth to it, which is very interesting. Talks about fallen angels, talks about lords of light. It even talks, the book of Enoch, which was the original scripture from Genesis that was added later, talk about these giants that were the offspring of the lords of light that mated with the humans, and they had to get rid of those, the higher beings, by causing a flood. So there's all this interesting stuff. I mean, we're really not, it's kind of really a lot to take in and comprehend for our human minds, for us land dwellers to understand, because we're just kind of like starting to understand that there could be more truth than what we've been told, and it's kind of hard to break out of that programming and understand that what happened on Earth is not according to just one book. That's really hard to break out of. Because, look at all the books we have now. Did they channel back then? Was the Bible a channeled book? How many people wrote it? How many people's hands were in it? There's a lot of truth. There are a lot of spiritual beings that took part in it. So there's a lot of truth in it. But you have to be able to see through all of them and take a lot of information and put it together as best you can, because you have the knowledge in you. Because we are those beings who were here and who created this. So it's kind of cool. It's like a game we're playing with ourselves. Back there.
You spoke of the 26,000-year cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way we can collectively break that cycle?
Yeah. Do you know what? The Great Pyramids were built as to stand the test of time, to show us, to be a symbol for the future when they knew everything was going to fall into complete ruin and we were going to forget our spiritual connection and go back into the Stone Age. They built those pyramids. That was there so we could look at them and say, well, we must have had a very advanced race. Now they're talking about the fact that they could be millions of years old. So that's what we can do. We can build something, build up. Who knows? If we could, everything could be wiped out again, and we'd have to start all over again. But guess what's still going to stand? Those pyramids. Just going to have to start all over again. Because it's those pyramids that made me wake up when I was a kid. And I looked at those and I'm like, wait a minute, something's going on here. And so, I know that I put those there. We did. We built those pyramids. We did it to remind ourselves. And all the other things, all the other structures all over the world.
So you were saying that about every 10,000 years, something about it, the world has been 10,000 years. I read a book by Gordon Asher Davidson recently who says that that we're actually moving into the fourth dimension, that we're being elevated, that the whole entire planet is this giant chakra. The Earth is a chakra in the solar system, and so as we move up, everybody else moves up. So maybe we won't destruct. Maybe we're going to actually move forward. I'm really hoping that's the truth.
I wouldn't be up here doing this right now if I didn't believe that. I'm very optimistic. I'm hopeful. I believe in us.
How do we move that to our heart? I read all this stuff all the time. Open your heart. Feel the presence. I am one with the Christ consciousness. But how? I've been so ingrained in the heaviness of the earth, of the evidence of this heaviness, to really connect to that. I am one with everybody. It's so much easier to do it up here. How do you get it down here?
All the answers, all the masters and all the sages and gurus tell us meditation. Yeah. So if you're not meditating, do it. It really works. It really opens the heart chakra. I didn't become who I am now until I started meditating. I was like people I know, I'm not going to mention, but I know so many people that don't have their heart chakras open, and the type, because they just won't hug you, they won't get any of this, they'll talk about building walls and making China pay for it. So, it's not, meditation will change that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
A two-part question. One is, the first part is, what was it in your life that was the greatest block to your ability to say, I am God? And the second part of the question is, what was the revelation that occurred in your life that said, yes, I am God?
It's a really good question. It's probably going to be true for a lot of people here too. The biggest block was when I was Sunday school and the Bible, teaching me that God was going to punish you, or he was wrathful, and you can't, you're below him. If you're Jewish, you were a yarmulke to separate yourself from God. It's crazy. And so I grew up Jewish. And so it was hard for me to be like, well, if I say that, it's blasphemy, and God's going to, what's he going to do to me, right? It's like, but if you've read Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh, if you've read all the great books that have come out, and you meditate, you realize that there's no way that God, which is unconditional love, energy source in the universe, would ever punish you. We punish ourselves, karma, and what we do, we reap, we sow. Even Jesus said it. It's not God who does it. So that was the big block. And my revelation, how I can come to that, to actually say it and feel, and not have that fear come in. Say, I am God, and know the truth behind that. It makes me smile now when I say it. When you come to that point, it's great. But when let me just think about what was my revelation. I think it was confirmation, everyone else that I was meeting, the people that were coming into my life that were vibrating at the same, frequencies, that were just open heart chakras. They were all feeling the same truth. And then reading it in so many books, it just kept confirming it for me. And all the great masters, the Hindu sages and great masters, that even the philosophers, Alan Watts and Ernest Holmes, these great philosophers who wrote these wonderful books, and even Manly P. Hall, a 33rd degree Mason. These teachings are everywhere, and that was the biggest thing for me, is confirmation from the greatest masters in history. I could go on. Gandhi. Yeah, okay.
I believe I'm God, and everybody else is God too. But one of the things I've been thinking about is why the fear of destruction? Because God is not the body, right? It's even from Dolores Cannon and everything that we all know, that we've all lived probably more than once, if you believe that you're God. And so if the body is destroyed and all of this material world is destroyed, there's still God. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be a lower level or a higher level or anything else. And I don't know how we could limit God by saying that that if there's this big destruction that comes, or if it doesn't, that it's going to be a certain way. And am I making any sense at all?
Yeah, I mean, you could rephrase the question, make it short, but I think I know.
Yeah, I guess what it is that why the fear of destruction?
Why do we have a fear of destruction?
Why fear of destruction? If we're all one, it's mind stuff, right? It really has nothing to do with reality.
Yeah, I mean, when you progress spiritually, you have no fear anymore. The masters teach us not to have fear, just to be detached, and some of them just aren't afraid of death. But if you've read Edgar Cayce's material and Dolores Cannon's material, we have a deep-seated memory of Atlantis, of major upheavals of the earth, cataclysms, floods. We all lived through those. So we're going to, it's just like something happens to you as a child, you're going to have that fear for a long time until you can get it released. So we have that in our subconscious. We have that destruction in our subconscious. It's kind of hard to let it go, but I think that once we progress on the spiritual path, meditate, connect with God more, we won't have that fear of that anymore. We'll get rid of that. It's not fearing death, basically. I was just going to say that that's it.
I guess I'm more wanting just to make this statement that you can't limit God.
Right.
That's what's coming up for me. Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel I was very lucky. I was raised by lazy parents who didn't know that 10 a.m. on Sunday morning really existed. So I was left to my own devices to figure out my place in the universe. And sometimes I felt like a butterfly beating against the glass. And now that I can, look past all of that, I don't feel quite such an odd duck anymore. I think it's all going to be okay.
Me too. Use the microphone right there.
Thank you. I just wanted to say something about the woman speaking about fear of destruction. Why we're afraid. In the human form, our brain is layered over a reptilian brain, an ancient brain. And the reptile attitude is, can I eat it or will it eat me?
Right.
That's the bottom line. And so the higher brain that's layered over is the evolution towards our rising up and comprehending our spirituality. And, as you said, that it's the spark within that we have to connect. It's the Godhead inside that is the comprehension of there is nothing to fear, because this does go away. And we know, the reptile brain knows that, we can be eaten, that we're going to die, that this sort of thing happens, but that's not the higher part. That's all I have. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But it's just, we're allowing the human
Right, we're part animal in nature, so we're going to have that
take
instinct.
over that which we aren't.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else have any more questions? Okay. I'm out here. I have a table. This is my book. The stuff I talked about today and much, much deeper. It goes into a lot of deep stuff. That's it. And my movie's also available, The Three Magic Words. So do come by. Thanks a lot. Thank you.